Hello and welcome to another brand new episode of Dingers and Stingers, the podcast that is ready to get wild. I'm Dallas, that's Matt, and that's Drew. And on today's MLB episode, we are going to talk about the wild card series coming up. We're going to talk all of the wild card series. We're going to talk about our keys for each team, who we think will win each series matchup, and that will give us who we have moving forward in the rest of the postseason. But the baseball postseason is here, and we're thrilled about it. Programming update, Dingers and Stingers, our favorite segment, has moved to our NFL show. So stay tuned for Dingers and Stingers at the end of our NFL show later on this week. So it'll be all baseball, all wild card today, except for at the very top, where we will start with the remainders of the regular season teams that have found themselves present in our In Memoriam segment. So, just as a reminder, we've been doing this the last few weeks. We are going to run down the teams that were eliminated from playoff contention in the last week. We are going to, let you know why we think they did not proceed forward into the playoff, and we'll let you know what they can look forward to in the afterlife, which is this offseason. As they rest and get ready to resurrect the next year, what can they look forward to in that time? So that's what we're going to do to start the show today. We have quite a few teams to get to, so let's get right into it. Let's start with the Houston Astros, and let's go to Drew for that.
Yeah, the Astros were the last American League team to be eliminated from the playoffs. We know them well. They've made the playoffs every year since 2017. They've won a couple World Series in that time, been to a bunch of ALCSs in that time, but couldn't make the dance this year. And one of the biggest reasons was they were just one of the most injured teams in the league this year. A ton of injuries. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I know at a certain point they were easily the most injured team in baseball. Some significant ones. Isaac Paredes missed a ton of the year. Josh Hader missed a significant portion at the end of the year. Different pitching injuries cropped up throughout the year. And, we knew this wasn't the same team that we've seen in years past. There's a lot of turnover on the roster anyway. So we already knew they might not be as scary of a team, but then they just couldn't overcome all those injuries. And to be honest, there was a vibe of toxicity in Houston ever since this incident where Framber Valdez crossed up his catcher intentionally or, allegedly intentionally. I think everyone who watched it thinks it's intentional, but, they haven't confirmed that ever. But, so the vibes took a turn after that, and then they just got buried in the last couple weeks of the season and couldn't get out of that. But what can they look forward to if you're an Astros fan? Well, there's a few shining stars on this team. Cam Smith, who they got in the Kyle Tucker trade, had a solid rookie season. Hunter Brown had an ace-like season at the top of their rotation. Framber Valdez is a free agent, so if he doesn't return, they can look to Hunter Brown to kind of take over as the new ace over there. And Jeremy Pena had his best year as a big leaguer so far. So there's a few guys who you can kind of look to and see the future of this team. But to be honest with you, I think it's a signal of a window that's closing. And they'll have to see if they can reopen it quickly or if it's going to be more of a long-term thing, because the roster turnover from those championship years has been very evident. Jose Altuve is still around, but he's not as good as he once was. Carlos Correa is back. He's not what he once was. And like I mentioned, Framber Valdez is a free agent. They don't typically re-sign these guys, so we'll see what happens, but I think they have their work cut out for them, and we'll see maybe even a more new-look Astros next year.
Yeah, you mentioned it. The window, looks like it's closing or is closed now. It's for the first time since 2016. These guys haven't made the postseason. That's a long run of, not just made the postseason. These guys were dominating the postseason for that, pretty much that whole run anyway, as well. So, Yeah, it's the end of a long streak that feels like more than just a hiccup on the road of something, but definitely feels like the end of something old and the beginning of something new that isn't necessarily as exciting as what the old used to be. That's for sure. But it was a pleasure to play them in the last series of the year. Beat them on the first game, and then that kind of set up what happened over the next 24 hours for them, which was not being as in control of what they were able to do here, not just needing to beat the Angels, but needing other teams to lose, and those teams did not lose. And we won't mention those teams till later because they deserved to not be mentioned until our next segment. So you know what? To the Astros, we say goodbye for 2025. At least for the next couple years, I think for me as a division rival, it'll still be a thing of like, I'll look over my shoulders for the Astros for the next for a little while longer. But for now, we don't have to look over our shoulders these playoffs because they are nowhere to be found. So let's go next to our next team. Kansas City Royals have died for 2025, and Matt is going to tell us about that.
Yeah, the Royals were a team that, in the beginning of our offseason stuff, when we did the Central divisions, I thought that they would be right there in the mix for it. And while they, at the end, you could argue they were in kind of that wild card race, it felt like there was just something off with them this year compared to last year. And I don't know. I don't know if I can pinpoint it exactly. I mean, I looked through some of the stats on their team. Like, Bobby Witt still had a 7+ WAR season, which granted is down from what, didn't he have like 10 last year or whatever, something crazy like that. Maybe those 3 games make the difference. They had Michael Garcia with a great year. He had like 5+ WAR. But after that, their team takes a pretty steep drop in terms of like guys who at least made like meaningful plays or meaningful stats, it seems. I didn't watch a ton of Royals baseball this year. I will preface with that. But just looking at, the end of season box score, if you will, it just seems like there may have been a lot of inflated numbers there. Their pitching staff seemed to struggle quite a bit this year. And it just seemed like their team was shallow, I guess is a good way to put it. Like there just wasn't a lot outside of their top couple guys. I mean, Vinny Pasquantino had a decent year. If you look at the numbers, he had like 2.5 WAR too. Bobby Witt obviously great, Michael Garcia great, but after that, it's really you look at the numbers, and they were struggling to find anyone else who would contribute consistently, at least. They end up making a trade and trading Freddie Fermin to the Padres, and granted, he wasn't like an everyday starter. You still trade away a pretty solid catching, player for your team, and the pitchers they got back started off pretty solid after the trade, and then towards the end of the year showed their inexperience a bit as well. So I don't know, it just feels like maybe from the outside perspective, someone who's not as like clued in with baseball all the time, maybe this was foreseeable negative regression. Well, who's to say, I just think this year it felt like, for the first 3/4 of the season, this division was so out of reach. That could have played into the mentality with the Tigers holding such a dominant lead. And then the Guardians going on whatever the hell this streak was to end the season. There's always been some team in this division that has been riding such a hot wave that maybe they just never got their chance to make up any ground, I guess. So, yeah, rest in peace to the Royals. We'll see you next year.
Yeah, quick note on the Royals. I think you're absolutely right. A lot of just, like last year, it was just kind of a best-case scenario season. And that resulted in a wild card appearance, and they won their wild card series and then lost to the Yankees eventually. But everything went right for them, and Bobby Witt Jr. had that season that was, one of the best shortstop seasons we've ever seen. And I remember saying in our previews, like, he could be like still a really good player and be worse than last year, and that will affect the Royals. And that's basically what happened. And Cole Reagan's missed a decent amount of time. Their pitching was just not as good as it was a year ago. So it's not necessarily shocking, but like think about Vinny Pasquantino is a solid player. His entire WAR this year is the difference between Bobby Witt in 2024 and Bobby Witt in 2025. So like, it's just
and he led the team in home runs, RBI, like
right. He's still like an amazing player, still going to get MVP votes, but yeah, just it's just not a roster that's necessarily built to have the season they had last year, and they were banking on that.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, for the Royals, who's it going to be besides Bobby Witt and besides, that, most coveted of young prospects. But, they'll answer that question hopefully soon in the offseason or in next year. But let's move on now to our next team, stay in the AL, and we'll talk about the Texas Rangers. Drew has notes on the Rangers.
Yeah, the Rangers ended up being, I believe, the third team out, like furthest away from the wild card in the American League, but honestly I would say they were the best team that didn't make it. They had solid play all around, and they just, I mean, there's some luck involved, but it was just crunch time games, I guess, that they couldn't perform in the biggest moments when they needed to, and that kind of made their record what it was, despite the fact that when they won games, they looked like a really good team. You can also point to some key injuries here. Every team has injuries, but some are more significant than others. Nathan Eovaldi was pitching lights out, and then he missed the last 2 months or so of the season. Corey Seager missed time. Marcus Semien missed time. Adolis Garcia missed time. Tyler Mahle missed a lot of time. But yeah, at the end of the day, you gotta play better when it counts, and they just couldn't get it done. We got some news about the Rangers just before we hopped on here that Bruce Bochy will not be returning as the manager. I had him. I knew there was some uncertainty there, but I would have said that was a positive that you still have him. I don't know. We'll see. But in terms of what they have to look forward to, I think you're just counting on this roster to get luckier and win more of the games that they should be winning than they have, because I think a big reason why Bruce Bochy left is that there is some financial uncertainty, and I don't know if the days of the big spending Rangers are still here or not. So we'll see what they can do to improve, but I think mostly it's going to have to come from guys they count on playing better and staying on the field and winning the games they need to win.
Yeah, this feels like a little bit of a danger zone for the Rangers in that, they spent big a few years ago. It worked. They got one World Series out of it, but the players they signed weren't, older guys by, any standard. So like these guys were going to be around for a while. So they felt like they spent themselves into a window. That was back when Adolis Garcia was playing like he was playing back then. That was back when, you had Jonah Heim as like a decent producing catcher. Those things aren't true today. And so that's where sort of the spending uncertainty comes from, is that when this front office, pushed it once and thought they only had to push it a little bit, they are finding now that they have more pushing to do, and are they going to be willing to do that? So, it would be, a first in a while if they are, but it would be useful for them. I think they still have, the guys on their team still have juice, and it would be nice to see those guys get another shot next year with some better supporting cast. But we'll see. So going over to the NL for a little bit. Now we're going to go to the Mets, and we're going to go to Matt for the Mets.
I just want to say I'm proud of myself for calling this one, because they were like clearly a team people thought would be in the race down here in the playoffs. Obviously, I mean, are they the top payroll or like second top payroll in the league right now? Yeah, number one. And I don't know, man. It's just one of those things. Like, to me, they never felt like a team that was built correctly. I for all the lack of experience and knowledge and whatever else you want to say about me as a baseball guy, I've never felt like investing into someone who is such a negative defender and is in my head basically a DH. That was never going to work out, and they were just too streaky. I mean, they obviously started the year hot, best record in baseball, I think, some way through June or something like that, and then just this massive collapse. Like, I don't know if it was locker room issues. I don't know if there's just this expectation when it comes to teams that have these massive, bloated payrolls. I don't know what it is. But at the end of the day, you look at this, and I saw they were the only team in like forever that didn't win a single game when they were losing in the ninth inning. They didn't come back once this season. It was like 0-7 or whatever, their number was. And it's just like, that's crazy. That to me shows that there is like such a lack, and sure, some of those games I'm sure are just bad luck. We saw the game Pete Alonso hit, like well, actually I don't even know if that was the ninth inning. Excuse that point. It's the sign of a team that doesn't have like that like heart to them, and sometimes you just need teams that are going to have the power of friendship innings. This feels like a team that's all there because they're being paid to be there, not because they love being a New York Met. They had a lot of great pitching to start the season from guys who we were like shocked were performing as well as they were. That did not continue as well. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions going forward for them, I think, because obviously they still have a lot of money invested. But as far as what they can look forward to in the offseason, I mean, you have an owner who's willing to pay money. You have an owner who wants to win. That is one of the biggest hurdles a lot of teams face, especially in today's baseball. So they have that going for them. Big market, big money. Whatever happens with Pete Alonso, whatever happens with some of these other guys who are potentially going to be free agents as well, you at least know they're going to be competitive in the off-season game. So, they'll be back. And Juan Soto did look great despite having a, quote, disappointing year. I don't know if he reached his 40-40, but he at least got real close to it. So, yeah, I mean, overall, there's things to look forward to still. You are still the team that has Juan Soto, the great hitter. They just need more consistency, honestly.
Yeah, I think the Mets, it's interesting because like this year the vibes became so bad, obviously. Like I don't know the clubhouse vibes, but last year they were the team with like the power of friendship behind them. They had the grimace Mets and all that.
Well,
and
I know exactly where they went.
They made it all the way to the ALCS. They came within 2 games of the World Series last year, and then they go out and they add Juan Soto. And I think the biggest concern going into this year was their pitching, because they revamped the rotation, but they didn't really get anyone that stood out as like, oh, that's a guy, that's an ace. And the reason I bought into them, and I'm assuming other people did, is because that worked out the year before. They got good years from Sean Manaea, Luis Severino, Jose Quintana. These are not guys you would necessarily count on before a season, and they all pitched very well for them. So I kind of bought into David Stearns having an eye for pitching, and it just didn't work out that way. And then, of course, once they started to fall, it was just like watching a slow train wreck, because the Reds got that last playoff spot. The Reds did not like light the world on fire in the last 2 weeks of the season. Like, the Guardians really earned their way into the playoffs. The Reds just played okay baseball.
They stayed
and
afloat longer.
Collapse. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of decent free agent pitchers in this class, and we'll talk a lot about free agency once the offseason officially starts. But I think the Mets have to get someone on the pitching side of the ball. But we'll see what happens.
All right. Staying in the NL, let's go to another team that, like the Rangers, finds themselves managerless this morning, the day that we record. Let's go to the Giants, and Drew has notes on the Giants.
Yeah, I think this one's really simple. It comes down to one guy, and it's Rafael Devers. You can't win with him. That's a joke. I really wish going into this Yankees series that the Red Sox had Rafael Devers still, but
Of course.
anyways, their cause of death, I would say, was they were just too streaky. They started off the season really strong, and then they made that aforementioned trade for Rafael Devers, and we all kind of thought, oh, that's the impact bat that will put them over the top and make them a competitive team. And it just didn't go that way. For a big part of the summer, they were one of the worst teams in baseball, and then they showed a little bit of life right at the end. And then it just wasn't enough. I don't really know exactly what the issue is, except for the roster is just not as strong as the other teams in their division, and they have to play those teams quite a lot, and they have a hard time getting free agents to come there. I don't know the exact reason for that either, but things to look forward to. I mean, they finally had a 30 home run hitter for the first time since Barry Bonds. Willie Adames did that. Devers did too, but it doesn't really count because he hit some on the Red Sox. Matt Chapman had another solid year. Logan Webb led the league in innings pitched and strikeouts. Justin Verlander was good down the stretch, and they have some interest in bringing him back. We'll see what Buster Posey does now. Bruce Bochy is on the market again. I would not be shocked at all to see Bruce Bochy go back to the Giants, because they seem kind of obsessed with the nostalgia there. But I think they show a willingness to spend every offseason. Maybe this will be the year that they can really get guys to come there. They haven't been super successful in the past, but yeah, they're just one of those teams that's like, are they good? Are they bad? They're not really either, and they need to just improve the roster to really put themselves over the top, I think.
Yep, 100%. I think on the Giants, they just didn't have the horses to get there this year. There's definite places where they can add, and it's if they think that bringing in a new manager is the way to go, then best of luck. Sometimes that matters, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll see how that impacts what the Giants do next year. But let's keep it rolling. Another NL West team we're going to talk about here. We're going to go to the D-backs, and Matt has notes on the Diamondbacks.
Yeah, the Diamondbacks, in my opinion, were the easiest of maybe all of these to pin down. I think it comes down to, they were in it up until this last week of play, and they were the biggest sellers at the deadline. So to me, I think their cause of death, if you will, is just a lack of faith from the ownership or the front office, because it's just, you look at what the impact guys like, Gino Suarez and Naylor and some of these guys would have had in these close games that they were playing. I look at a bunch of these games that they played with the Padres, even in this last series, we ended up sweeping them. Some of them came down. I mean, we had an overtime game, an extra innings game. We had, a bunch of real close games. And it's like those little things matter, especially, we talked earlier. It's not like the Reds, blew through the door into playoffs. The Mets and the Reds kind of both were fighting to see who could be the most stagnant. And there was an opening for another team to hop in there. And so for the Diamondbacks, I mean, yeah, I just think it is a lack of faith from the ownership, from the front office. They are a team that has players with playoff experience. I mean, it was not too long ago they made their own deep run, and they just gave up, man. And I understand, you go out in the offseason, you invest in Corbin Burns, you think you've got this new ace who's going to be amazing, and he ends up missing the season with Tommy John, and there's all these things, and maybe that made them think like, we just look pretty mid at this point. Like, I don't want to, go out and start buying players. We might as well sell off all these guys. They had a lot of guys on expiring contracts, but at the end of the day, like, the only thing that matters in sports is making the playoffs. At the end of the day, that's all that matters in almost any sport is, are you going to make the playoffs? Because if you do, you got a chance at the whole thing. And to me, they absolutely had a chance at making playoffs this year, and they threw it away months ago. And I saw the interview with Corbin Carroll after the game and stuff, and he's like, we didn't do enough. And granted, that's the responsible player thing to say. But I also think that, the players did what they could at times, and they were let down from stuff out of their control. So, yeah, rest in peace. But they'll be back. I really believe that. I think they'll be back.
Yeah, they put together a nice little run there, and the way that they looked without, some of the guys that they were missing, definitely, it doesn't discourage a fan base, right? And so,
Yeah.
you get another year of some of these guys together. You think, maybe you have a shot. So, we'll see him next year, but for now, it's goodbye to the Arizona Diamondbacks for 2025. So let's go to our second to last team we'll talk about in this segment. And who would have guessed we'd be talking about him this late in this segment? The last of the regular season, eliminations that we're talking about here. And the Miami Marlins find themselves in that group. So let's go to Drew with some notes on how the heck we weren't talking about these guys in this segment a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is less of a cause of death and more of a cause of how did they last this long? Because the obvious thing is that this is simply not a playoff team. It's not a playoff roster. In fact, I'll fess up to this. I said in our previews, like, this is my prediction for the worst record in baseball. And they proved me wrong. They were in it until like the last weekend of the season. They had a nice cherry on top by being the team that knocked the Mets out of the playoffs, division rival there. So I think if you're a Marlins fan, this is as optimistic as you can be. I know they made the playoffs a few years ago, but it didn't really like seem like they did. Like, I don't know, it was kind of a weird year. But they had some nice performances from some young players at the major league level. Agustin Ramirez, the catcher, Kyle Stowers had a good year. Otto Lopez, Xavier Edwards, Jacob Marcy. They have decent pitching that they did not trade away. Sandy Alcantara, Yuri Perez, Edward Cabrera. There's pieces here that you like, and for the first time in a long time as a Marlins fan, you're not going into an off season necessarily thinking, okay, which of these guys are going to get traded? I think they did enough this year to earn the right to run it back and see what they can really do. Give it another season. The bad news is I just don't anticipate them spending, because they never do. And they are more inclined to trade away anyone who might make money than they are to add anyone who might make money. So I worry about how are you going to improve this team without spending anything. But that being said, there's a lot of nice young players here. They got a little boost by beating the Mets. Maybe they have that young, dumb kind of energy where that teams sometimes need, where it's like, what do you mean we're a bad team? Like, we don't know. We're just going to go out there and play baseball. And, it's fun to root for those teams from time to time. So good season for the Marlins. Happy for them. Finished ahead of the Braves, I believe, which is, not what anyone expected. And so good for them, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, if any team maybe this year, aside from, speaking only of teams that have been like okay or bad the last couple years. Like, if any of those teams after this year deserve some benefit of the doubt going into next year, I think it might be the Marlins, because of what they were able to put together this year. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a lot of these same guys return next year and, add a couple depth pieces, and then, the front office will call that good, and, we'll see where they can end up next year, pending how everyone else around them does. But let's go to our last team now. We want to make sure we hit everybody. And the last team we're going to talk about is the St. Louis Cardinals. And Matt has notes on the Cardinals.
Yeah, yeah, similar sentiments to the Marlins. This is a team that I didn't think we'd be talking about late as we are. I really believed that this team was going to be like quite bad. And hey, they strung together, enough wins to not look like a mess of a team. They seem, in a similar sense, but on the worst side of it than the Giants. They seem like a team that doesn't really know their direction at the moment. We look back in I was about to say the previous generation, as if it's not like just a few years ago, but it felt like the Cardinals used to be this like standard in baseball of being a well-run machine where they were always constantly moving in a direction, and that direction was considered positive. And they were competitive. They were making playoffs. They had the ability to get good players, to develop good players. Right now, they end up losing Goldschmidt, and Arenado's taking a step back as he just continues to get older. And you look at some of the young guys who were these like top prospects for them, and Jordan Walker or Mason Wynn, and they're kind of flashy, but they're really not these like day in, day out, just like star players that I think they need them to be to replace their old regime. And so because of that, I think they're just in this weird spot where they have some young talent who's just accruing service time and not really much of a ceiling to go with it. So I don't know. I don't know what they have to look forward to be honest. Mason Wynn can throw the ball real hard. That's always fun, is when you have a cool shortstop. Other than that, I don't know. I don't know their farm system well enough to say, like, well, at least 2 years from now, they've got somebody coming up. It's one of those teams where I look at it and it's just like, it feels like a team that might just be stuck in the mud a bit.
Yeah, I think what I think the Cardinals have to look forward to is this. They are changing regimes. Chaim Bloom is taking over as the main guy in charge there, and it's a bit of good news, bad news, because the bad news is the Cardinals are accustomed to a certain standard that they have not been meeting, and it's going to continue for a little bit. Because I can speak from experience of undergoing a similar thing with the Red Sox and Chaim Bloom. It's going to take some time. However, he is a really good person to rebuild a farm system. He is responsible for the Red Sox having Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony, Christian Campbell, a lot of these young guys that are now kind of the core of the Red Sox are a big part because of Chaim Bloom, and some good trades over the years. The Wilyer Abreu trade was Chaim Bloom, so that's what the Cardinals have to look forward to. The other bad news is he did not prove to be good at signing free agents, or either convincing free agents to come there, or when he does, picking the right ones. Trevor Story had a good year this year, but that looked pretty disastrous for a couple years there. Masataka Yoshida is fine, but that is not the contract he should have been signed to. So there's going to be good and bad, but overall, I would say the Cardinals are due for a refresh, and I think Chaim Bloom is the guy to run a refresh.
Yep, it certainly, he certainly has a track record that would lend you to believe that it is that around that time for the Cardinals. So we'll keep an eye on them next year, but for now we have to say goodbye. And so goodbye to the Cardinals, goodbye to all these teams that we talked about in our first segment here. May they rest. Hopefully they enjoy watching the playoffs with all the rest of us. So let's get to the postseason, because here we are on the doorstep of wild card series starting. We are recording on Monday, the 29th of September, and Wildcard Series begins tomorrow. It'll be over before we know it, but that doesn't mean that these series aren't going to be full of exciting things, and we're going to talk about each and every one of them right now. So what I want us to do is we're just going to take a look at each series. I've assigned one of you to each series to give a key and a prediction for who the series winner will be. But we're just going to, use this as a way to frame a discussion around all the series. So everyone's going to be in on these, but I did give you guys each one to run the table on. So we're going to start with the matchup of the AL Central. Sorry, I just time traveled from August. So the AL Central champion Tigers, I'm sure, and the Guardians. I guess maybe not. Actually, AL Central champion Guardians, I guess, is who we're talking about, hosting the Detroit Tigers. So let's go to Matt. He has our keys for this series, and then let's just talk about Tigers and Guardians.
Yeah, I think the key here is the Tigers. I'll start with the Tigers. They need to return to who they are, right? They need to return to who they were this whole season. They were in contention to be the top record in baseball at one point. We thought that division was over months ago. Like, we were talking like, well, Central's, locked up, we're good, we'll move on and, start looking at other stuff. And then a lot of their players just started getting into these slumps, and they started coming, inconsistent as a team. And I saw this thing on Twitter about when Trump went to visit their game and their guys did the little Trump dance, and then after that was like the largest collapse, like starting at that game in MLB history for like a division race. So maybe they got to stop dancing. Maybe they stop having him at games. Who knows? But they need to return to who they were before all of this happened, right? They need to get back to that true like mid-season form. How they do that, who knows? But at the end of the day, they're going into the playoffs and they have a true ace, and that matters a lot, especially a guy who's willing to just go out and shove like that. So they'll remain dangerous for sure. And as far as the Guardians go, it's truly like looking in a mirror. It's like the flip side of everything. The key for them is just to keep the power of friendship going. Like, they don't have, I saw the meme too of like, how are the Guardians doing this? Their lineup is just Jose Ramirez and a bunch of raccoons in trench coats. And that made me laugh, because it's like, yeah, dude, I watched a couple of the games down the stretch. I don't know who like a lot of those dudes are. Like, truly, I've never heard of them. And, it'll be a guy coming and hitting cleanup, and it's like, yeah, he's played in 34 games this year. He's batting .230, but here we go. And they win the game. It's this bizarre thing. But they got to keep it going, man. I mean, whatever's been working for them to go on this crazy streak down the, end of the season, you got to keep that going. And whether that's, something they're doing in the locker room that gets these guys pumped, whether it's the message, whether it's the philosophy of their at-bats, I can't speak to that type of stuff, but it's been working. So keep the power of friendship going. As for the winner, I'm going to go Guardians. I think it's tough to kind of pull your head out of your own ass sometimes, especially for a team that limps into playoffs the way that the Tigers did. As much as I think, looking just purely at the roster, I think I would typically side with the Tigers in this. I do think they're more talented. I think they have more star power at this point. Just the Tigers, man, they've looked bad. And I think it's just hard sometimes to put a stop to a slump, especially when it's such a team-wide slump. It's not like one guy needs to rest for a couple days and he'll be better. It's a team-wide slump. So I think, they might be hitting playoffs at the wrong time for themselves. So winner, Guardians.
Yeah, I'm just gonna echo that. I think the Guardians take this series, and I think they're in the Tigers' head a little bit. I mean, how could you not be? We just saw them play 7 games down the stretch, and I think the Guardians won 6 of those games. So, it just seems like they're trending in opposite directions at the exact wrong time for the Tigers.
Yeah, and when you look at the Tigers lineup, you really don't have that many guys that are hitting at league average from an OPS perspective. Like it's really they've really regressed to sort of a mean that we were familiar with seeing these guys float around in the last quarter of the year about and so it's really one of those things where when you're in a three-game series, the rotations have a huge impact. A lot of teams are, deeper when it comes to a three-man rotation than they are when it comes to a 4 to 5 man rotation. When it comes to that, for the Tigers, you've got, the Scooble game. Hopefully, you can take that one, and then from there, just rely on the lineup to show up for one of the games. And so where they choose to deploy, when the lineup chooses to show up, is going to depend for the Tigers. That's going to make the whole thing. So, we'll see where it goes from there. But any more thoughts on Tigers Guardians before we move on? All set? All right. Let's go to the next series, which Drew has some notes on. The next chapter in a long, long story between two teams, the Red Sox and the Yankees. It was being teed up for what would you say, 3 weeks out from the playoffs. You were kind of like, if the Red Sox are going to make the playoffs, this is where they're going to go, pretty much, or 2 or 3 weeks, would you say?
It honestly longer. It felt like for most of the second half, that looked to be the matchup, just swapping back and forth who would be the home team.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, there was some stuff up in the air up until the last weekend, but it turns out it was fate, and the Red Sox and Yankees will be meeting again in the playoffs. Um, I think to dive right in here, the key for the Red Sox in this short series, well, we know, as I've talked about in Fan Corner every week, I talk about the Red Sox. They're missing Roman Anthony. That's a huge loss for this lineup. And ever since he went down, the offense has not looked good. They have done enough, obviously, to make it into the playoffs, but really the offense has been below average ever since he went out. So the key for the Red Sox is the starting pitching has to go out and dominate and do their thing like we've seen them do against the Yankees this year. Garrett Crochet obviously had an amazing year for the Red Sox. He pitched very well against the Yankees this year. He's going to have to do it again. I have a lot of faith in him, but that's the path forward for the Red Sox. Crochet has to do really well. I'm thinking 7 or 8 shutout innings, 1-run innings, and save the bullpen because we got Brian Bayo going in game 2, and despite his history against the Yankees, I'm nervous about him because the last month of the season he was not pitching very well. So if he could give you 5 innings of close game, and then you can let the bullpen eat from there because the bullpen has been solid. That's the path for the Red Sox. It was announced today that Lucas Giolito is not going to pitch game 3 if there is a game 3, because he's dealing with an elbow injury that we did not know about. So that makes me nervous. But even, to be honest with you, even if he was pitching, I don't think this bodes well for the Red Sox if it goes to a game 3. I think the Yankees are built better for this series, given the current rosters. If it goes to a third game, especially now that it would probably be Connolly early in his 5th career start going in game 3. The Yankees are the best team in baseball at hitting left-handed pitching. Garrett Crochet, of course, is a different beast out there, but I would not love my chances with Connolly early out there. For the Yankees, the key is going to be don't beat yourselves. They obviously have been a good team. They made it this far. They are actually tied with the Blue Jays. They just lost the tiebreaker. That's the only reason they're not division winners. And they beat bad teams easily. They took care of business against bad teams as good as anyone. But the they are just known, and we saw it on the biggest stage in the World Series last year. They are known as kind of a sloppy team, a team that doesn't take care of the baseball on defense. They don't run the bases well on offense. They're kind of boomer bust. They live and die by the home run is kind of their reputation. I really do think they're in a good position to beat the Red Sox in this series, as long as they don't just get in their own heads, get in their own way, throw the ball around the yard. Because, like I said, the Red Sox offense has not looked good lately. The Yankees will have Max Fried and then Carlos Rodon in the first two games, two lefties that are having great years, and the Red Sox have not hit lefties super well. It's in New York. Like, all these things kind of like trend in the direction of the Yankees. So as long as they don't give away runs to the Red Sox, they should be able to win this series. My prediction is that the Yankees will take this series in 3 games. I just think the Red Sox are limping into this too much, and it might have been a different story if we were at full strength, but I just think it might be a little too much to overcome. Obviously, I hope that's not the case, and this isn't even just a pure reverse jinx situation. This is my honest opinion. I think that the Yankees are better set up in this series.
Yeah, it's the 3-game series that you have to be. It just changes the calculus, right? Like it changes the calculus when it comes to everything. Like every matchup matters more. Where it's at matters more. Things like that. And so I don't know how many years it's been of doing this. This is the second year or third year of doing the 3-game wild card, maybe more.
I think 2022 was the first year, so this is actually the fourth. Season.
Okay. So we've seen it, but we've seen it. My point is we've seen it over the course of the last few years that we've been doing this. All of that, it changes the whole thing. And so you would hope that what we changed it from gives teams like the Red Sox a better chance. You get a couple in there, a couple shots at it, but I think ultimately where the series takes place, and then considering the power that the Yankees have in their lineup, I mean it's a pretty daunting task to walk into Yankee Stadium and face them down for any team. And while I do think the Red Sox, they could take one for sure. I think it's gonna come down maybe to Game 3, and that's a really hard thing to look up at from there. But we'll see. I think it's going to be. It has the potential to be, I think, one of the more entertaining series of these. I think without
certainly so.
Without spoiling future thoughts, I think that it has the potential to be very entertaining amidst the wild card, the group. So, but let's get to anything else on Red Sox Yankees before we move on. All good.
All I'll add is
Matt. You feel like picking a winner?
This is the series with the most hate.
Yeah, true. There's no matchup in this. Even another division rivalry matchup between the Guardians and Tigers. Like even they don't even come close to scratching the surface here of what lays beneath a Boston Yankees world series. So feel like picking a winner, Matt? Put you on the spot.
Picking a winner of Red Sox Yankees, well, you know what? I'll stay true to my preseason rankings where I did think that the Red Sox could make a run at the series. So I'm going to have to say Red Sox. Going to go Red Sox here. I mean, it feels like you guys have been good against them this year. And, Anthony going down sucks. But at the end of the day, you guys kind of had a logjam at the outfield position anyway. So if any team could survive losing an outfielder, it would be the Red Sox.
Yeah. All right. So let's move on to another series. Let's go next to Padres and Cubs. San Diego is going to take their show on the road to Chicago. And Matt is on that series for us, as is his right as a Padres fan. So let's hear it, buddy. Let's give a key for the Padres, key for the Cubs, and then your winner, and then we'll talk about the series a little bit.
Yeah. I'll start with the Cubs and what I think here because, they announced, we're going to see Matthew Boyd, I believe. We're missing Horton, I believe is the pitcher's name. We're gonna miss him in this wild card series, but we're facing Matthew Boyd, and earlier in the year we played the Cubs a lot, like first and second week of the season, I believe it was, or at least like very early on, and he pretty much he balled out. He dominated us pretty good. It was like 11 something innings and like 2 hits given up. And obviously he had an awesome year. There was, mid-season talk even amongst the show of like, is he going to be included potentially in Cy Young conversations with how well he was doing? And as of recently, that's kind of fallen off. As with a lot of these teams, I think it's one of those things like, it's important how you get into playoffs. Do you get in limping or do you come in riding a good wave? As with the Cubs, it felt like, they weren't a bad team by any means, but there was a lot of problems down the stretch, and post, trade deadline, they ended up having to bench, not bench, but basically give him some rest, both mentally and physically. Kyle Tucker, PCA went from being like maybe last year's, Bobby Witt Jr. to kind of regressing back to what he's always been. There's been a number of things that earlier on in the season, when I would have said the Cubs were my favorite out of the NL, they've kind of regressed on it. And now they seem like a team that is really good and still has all that potential in them. But if you're not a team that can tap into that potential pretty much on demand or can keep it consistently, and they've kind of shown down the stretch that's not the case, it leaves them being open. So I think the key for them is they need to hit their potential, because their potential is, in my opinion, maybe the best in the NL right now. I genuinely believe that. When they are all at their, playing at their peak, I would take that Cubs roster pretty much over most of these other ones in the NL. And as for the Padres, I think the key is our stars need to be the stars. We've been a top-heavy team for a few years now, and that's what we got to ride. I mean, at the end of the day, like, it's tough to rely on, career average players. I'm going to be nice because it's my team. Career average players to step up and have these big, consistent moments. And I mean, when it comes to playoffs in any sport that has, a series, I think at the end of the day, it's about consistency. Right? Like, obviously you can have a big moment, you can hit a big, home run, you can have these moments, but at the end of the day, you still have to win the majority of the games. It's not about winning one game. And so to think that our bottom, 6 through 9 is really going to come out and show up the Cubs, I don't think so. It's got to be Tatis. It's got to be Machado. We need Xander to be Xander Bogaerts, not Padres Xander Bogaerts. Like, we need Xander Bogaerts. Jackson Merrill. I mean, last year, if we can get what he was last year back, he's kind of had a resurgence of power. But it's like, these are the guys who are like the core of the team, right? These are the guys that we're locked into for the next 7, 8+ years. These are the guys, and we got to win with them, right? We haven't proven that we can yet. And so I think that's a huge hurdle for the Padres is, can we actually win with the guys we committed this window to? Because at the end of the day, like, it's pretty hard to get out of contracts like that without getting, like, negative assets in return, essentially. And so, yeah, that's the keys for the Padres. Unfortunately, I have to. I'm scared of it because my predictions so often go poorly, but I have to. I'm taking the Padres in 2. I have to, because I don't want to go to our third pitcher. We have to win 2. It's already been announced Dylan Cease will be our Game 2 pitcher. This year has been really scary watching Dylan Cease play. He still strikes out dudes at a crazy clip. I think he hit 200 again. But it gives flashbacks of Blake Snell on the Padres, where he would be at like 97 pitches and it's like midway through the 4th, and you're just like, what's going on here? Like, this is unsustainable. That's kind of been Cease this year. He's just been a little rough around the edges, and especially for his pedigree, he's been I would argue this is his worst season in the bigs. I'd have to go double check some of the earlier seasons, but I'd argue this is his worst season in the bigs. So I mean, we need a big come up from him, but let's finish it in 2, man. Give him three innings and then bullpen game the rest of that game too, because it's what we're built for.
Yeah, I'm also going to choose Padres in 2, and I think the biggest reason is pitching because Pavetta's had a great year, and like you said, Cade Horton can't go for the Cubs. Justin Steele's been out for most of the year with he had Tommy John, so their best options aren't available, and the Padres bullpen is the best in baseball, and I think that matters especially in the playoffs. Mike Shildt should have a quick trigger on any of his starting pitchers, and I think, you only need to win 2 games. The bullpen should be able to do that for you. And the Cubs just have been struggling. I mean, they as good as the roster seems, like a lot of those guys had not the best second halves. So I like the Padres in this series.
Yeah, I think I do too. For all the reasons we've all been mentioning, I like to see this team go on the road too, because they bring something with them when they go on the road. They bring a little something extra. Those stars do bring a little something to a visiting stadium that is it is more of like it's not a full equalizer, of course, like especially Wrigley, like it's going to be rocking and rolling for these games, but these players, they do bring an element that is a little bit of a scale tipper back the visiting team's way in terms of they're not a visiting team that ever goes in afraid of any environment, and so I think they showed that a lot last year, and I think they'll continue to show that. So I like watching this team go on the road. I think they do well. So alrighty, let's round out our wild card discussion with the final series that we're going to talk about, and that is the mighty Cincinnati Reds going up against the Los Angeles Dodgers, and Drew has our keys for that series. So let's hear it, buddy.
Yeah, the Reds, as we mentioned when we were talking about the Mets, they're not coming into the playoffs on like a super hot streak or anything. They just simply did enough. Barely over 500, but that's good enough to make the playoffs, and your prize is you get to go to Los Angeles and play the reigning World Series champs and all their star power. So my key for the Reds is play like you have nothing to lose. Keep riding this lightning that you're kind of currently capturing, because let's face it, you're an underdog. You're a bit overmatched. So the key here is play loose, have fun, and have your starting pitching do the starting pitching thing. And it's a 3-game series. Almost all the series throughout the season are 3-gamers. And if this series was in August, would I be shocked if the Reds took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers? No, I don't think I would. So they have that going for them. On the other side of things with the Dodgers, just try to do what happened last year and don't get a case of the October scaries that have plagued the Dodgers in other years. Just play to your potential. Be the better team that you know that you are. You got Blake Snell going game 1. You got Yamamoto going game 2. That should bode well for your team. That's not a Reds lineup that is going to just totally annihilate you. You wouldn't think. Roki being added to the bullpen, he's looked pretty nasty out there. That might help because their bullpen has been really shaky lately. But I think the thing is, like, you are a better team. You have a better lineup. You have a better pitching staff, despite the fact that I would say it is closer there than with the lineup. So if you're the Dodgers, just be the Dodgers. Don't get caught up in like, oh no, this is actually a scary series. It's only, if we lose 2, we're done. Like, you can't play tight. You got to play loose. And you got to take care of business. And because we saw them do it last year, I am picking the Dodgers to win this series. Dodgers in 2, actually, because oftentimes momentum is key, and we don't see too many 3-game series in these wild card rounds since we started. It's been a lot of sweeps. So I anticipate more of that. And I just think the Dodgers are the better team, and it would be thrilling to be wrong about that, but I just think the Dodgers are going to take care of business.
Yeah, you feel that way. Like it definitely feels that way. Like, and even if somehow in game one, because Hunter Green is going for the Reds, somehow they keep that game close and then feast on the Dodgers bullpen, you know, game three, they're going to send Shohei out there and he's not going to pitch 4 innings. You know what I mean? Like they're going to let him go. And that's going to be not what you want to see if you're the Reds going into a pivotal game three. So even if it gets that far, I just think that it's going to be shutdown time from there.
And don't forget, little known fact, they have to face Shohei on the other side of the ball too. He actually hits for the Dodgers. So
No.
And lest we forget, they'll have to face him every day. You can't escape him. I mean, the Dodgers, quote unquote bullpen. We're gonna start seeing the quote unquote bullpen in the playoffs, because what I mean by that is you're gonna see a lot of pitchers who should be starters come out of the bullpen this playoffs probably, and so the quote unquote bullpen is going to look a lot more like a starting rotation for the Dodgers. Here come these longer series, so they definitely want to get past this one to get there, so that they can, show everybody what they were planning this whole time, basically. So I have the Dodgers being very motivated to go out there and take it. So all that to say, I think they'll do well. Anything else on Dodgers Reds before we shake?
I think it's going to be a Gavin Lux legacy series. I mean, we could see we could see a true revenge series here.
That would be amazing.
All right, that would be awesome.
Let's also say the Reds' top three pitchers are not anything to laugh at. Like
No, not at all.
As much as it is the Dodgers, and they should win the series. The Reds have a good top three pitching, like at part of the rotation. So. Fingers crossed, man. I hope Elijah, if you're watching, I hope you lose. I need it.
It would be pretty incredible.
I need it.
It would be.
That's
not to
we've seen the
confuse
whole
anybody.
Dodgers season.
Yeah.
The whole Dodgers season has played out, so we kind of know who they are. But let's not forget what we felt about them after the offseason. They won the World Series. They signed every possible good player, it seems like. They made this super bullpen. If they get knocked out in the wild card round, first of all, they're playing in the wild card round. That in itself is crazy. If they get knocked out by the Cincinnati Reds, it would be
hilarious.
Quite a story, and it would be cool.
Yeah, hilarious, awesome. Not to confuse anybody, we all think it would be awesome if the Reds won, but it's just if we're picking, maybe we'll pick the way that we should. So let's move on here to sort of the pseudo new way of ending our baseball episodes. But we aren't going to make any specific predictions this week. We figure predicting the series will do. We do want to talk about our predictions from last week, though, real quick before we end. So quickly, Drew, just go over your prediction from last show, and then we'll talk about how that went. You got pretty close.
Yeah, well, I want to point out there will be one more quick segment after this. It's the final time we'll do it, but
it doesn't need to be.
My prediction was that we would get our first no-hitter of 2025 in the final week of the season, because I just wanted one. I wanted this not to be a full season, but unfortunately it didn't happen. First time since, I believe, 2006, I think I saw was the last time there was no-hitter in a full season. So it's been a while, but we didn't get one. Shane Smith went something like 6 perfect innings on the last day of the season for the White Sox, but couldn't get it done. So we did not get our no-hitter. Maybe we'll get one in the playoffs. That would be something.
Yeah, maybe it was all saved for this moment that we're going to get in the playoffs when someone throws one. Who's to say? But no dice, unfortunately, there. And then I predicted in Matt's stead last week, and I predicted that one of the teams that falls out of the AL postseason will fire their manager before the postseason starts. Did not happen. My thought around that, now that it hasn't happened, was that it was either going to be the Tigers or the Astros. To me, at that time, and one of those teams was going to be the one that fell out. And for the Tigers, it would have been a historic collapse. You feel like someone's got to go in that situation. AJ Hinch is a big name to do that to, I will admit, so it wasn't all too likely, but someone had to go, so I figured maybe that. And then for the Astros, is some of the things we talked about earlier of like the perception of how that team is gelling has been bad. Ever since Framber Valdez did his thing up there, or didn't do his thing up there, or accidentally did something up there, whatever you want to say, however you view it. But so you take that, and then you take the fact that they collapsed their way out of a division championship, and not only that, but out of the playoff. You feel like that's justification to fire somebody. That was my thought. Neither team bit. Obviously the Tigers made it, so we live to fight another day. But the Astros didn't bite. But definitely some manager turnover already throughout the league. So there were teams that did make that call, but neither of the teams that I predicted. So all right, well, we teased it. This is our final segment of the show. We're going to wrap up here with this. Our home run draft, which we did at the beginning of the baseball season. If you weren't around, if you don't remember, these guys picked players, a full roster of position players, and then 3 pitching staffs each. 3 pitching staffs or 5? 3,
5.
Right? 5 pitching staffs each. And so they picked five pitching staffs each, and we had a competition. The position players, you get your home runs counted for you. Every 3 home runs your pitching staff gives up count against you. And whoever had the highest total at the end of the year, after all that calculus, was going to win. There was one very important rule that we put into place here that influenced a lot of how this season went, which was that the players, the home runs only count for your position players if they hit it when playing that position. So with all those things in mind, let's go and see how because this was only a regular season competition. So let's go see how the final score turned out of this gigantic, huge competition.
Yeah. So, if you've been following along, you understand that perhaps 3 was a wrong number to put for the ratio of home runs, because we've been in the negatives a lot. And that's where we ended. Matt with a whopping negative 78 home runs for his team, and I am the inaugural champion with negative 42 home runs for my team. So if we do this again, we'll adjust. But I did want to point out, I did the math just for Matt's sake, just to see if we did not have our positional rule, and you just counted all the home runs that all our hitters hit, no matter where they were playing. And if we did it that way instead, Matt, you would have had negative 14 home runs, and I would have had negative 14 home runs. We would have tied. So, that's a pretty
way.
That's a pretty good way to do. I think if we do it again, we'll have to do it's 5 home runs for your pitching staff instead of 3. But, I just want to shout out as the winner. I picked Cal Raleigh thinking, he hit the most home runs for any catcher this year. I did not anticipate him hitting the most home runs that any catcher has ever hit. So that was probably the pick of the draft. But overall, good competition.
Yeah,
Congrats to me. And better luck next year to Matt.
Yep.
Negative 14, negative 14 is crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty fun. It's a hard fought battle. Keeping up with it has been fun because it seemed like Matt lost a player every week to some tragedy, some unforeseen garbage that happened. It seemed like he would lose a player seemingly all the time to it. Don't worry. You can still pick Christian Campbell next year. Maybe he'll start the season with the Red Sox next year. You never know. So you can always go for redemption next year with somebody. But yeah, that was fun. So we'll definitely do that again next year, and it'll be fun. So that'll do for our baseball show this week, though. So thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube. Hit us in the comments with your predictions for Wild Card Week. Wild Card Week, kind of, Wild Card Series. Let us know who you think's got it, who's moving on. And, follow us on Instagram at Dingers and Stingers. You can follow us there too. And check out our NFL show coming out later this week. We'll talk some NFL on that show. But happy baseball to everybody. Happy postseason to everybody. I have the pleasure of working from home, so baseball is just going to be on all day tomorrow here, which is going to be great, regardless of what channel it's on. It's going to be on. And, that's just going to be how we do it. But any last thoughts on anything before we shake, guys?
Go Sox, go Padres.
Yeah, I think me and Matt are going to be pretty stressed for the next few days, but we'll see what happens.
We could be pretty sad come next recording. So
yeah, we'll check in come next recording. So stay tuned for that. But until then, enjoy some baseball, and we'll see you next time. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.